I'm Sina Anahita at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, where I am an MFA student in art, specializing in printmaking and drawing. And in this short video, I'm going to show you how to make a registration jig for printing linocuts. So a registration jig is really useful if you're printing two or more colors on a lino block so that you can line up your your paper and your blocks, your different blocks, and so that everything meets. It's also really useful to have a registration jig for just a single color as well, because it secures the paper to the block and it doesn't slip around and it doesn't get messy in that way. So the first thing I did is I had a linoleum block that had shipped to me and was damaged in transit, and that I had practiced on it, so it was useless for lino cutting. And my professor, my art professor, David Mollett, suggested that the blocks, the bars on the registration jig be the same exact height as your lino block. So it was very convenient for me to just measure off these cuts on my existing discarded lino block, and I took it down to my neighbor, my wonderful neighbor Skip Nodler, who cut it up for me. Had four nice cuts. I'll use only two for the registration jig, and then I'll make myself a bench hook out of the other two. I bought a really nice 12 by 18 plaque that was made of maple from a local craft store. I wanted something that was high quality, that wouldn't warp or twist or bend over the life of my registration jig. You could probably use plywood, high quality plywood, or even good quality shelving, as well as if you've got the tools and the equipment that you need to be able to cut it to size and to finish it so that it's a fine piece of wood that will not bend. And I just used wood glue to secure the two bars to my nice piece of wood, and I glued the linoleum side down so that I would have the nice wooden surface where I could make pencil marks or other kinds of marks to line up my paper over the lifetime of my jig. And I let it dry overnight. I was real careful to wipe up any of the overflow with a paper towel before it dried. It was real difficult for me to let it dry overnight because I was so eager to begin, but in the long run, that was a good idea. And now my lino block, my carved block, fits just very securely, very snugly into my new registration jig. With a Sharpie and a ruler, I marked off some places on the bar that I thought would be helpful for centering my paper. And then I marked with a very soft pencil, very discrete marks of the center line to mark the center line on my printing paper. And this is on the back of the printing paper. And then I can line up those lines, the pencil lines, on the lines that I had made on my registration jig. And then when I get ready to print, I'll use these heavy-duty spring clamps that you can get at any local hardware store to secure the paper to my registration jig. And then I'll move the registration jig so that the two corners that have the two the two spring clips on them, so they'll actually hang over the table. My professor suggests that we use the spring clips on only one end of the paper so that you can raise up the paper. You can peel back the paper to see what your progress is on burnishing the ink onto the paper.